All right, so we've done a lot of together, but this time I got to say you've really thrown down the gauntlet
Oh, yeah.
with this
This one's intense.
Dalio Power Index appendix thing.
Yeah,
Frankly, some of these projections are a bit unsettling.
for sure.
I'm a little nervous to even open this thing.
I get it. I understand.
Okay,
It paints a complex picture,
Yeah.
but I think that's what makes it so fascinating.
Okay.
Instead of just listing, who's strong right now, it tries to predict who's going to thrive in the coming decades, and the factors it uses
Okay.
go way beyond just economics.
Okay, so let's just rip off the Band-Aid here.
Yeah,
What's the headline here?
yeah.
What kind of world are we walking into?
They lay out a world on the brink,
Okay.
the global conflict gauge.
Okay.
Their fancy term for measuring global tensions is at a level we haven't seen since right before the World Wars.
Wow.
And it's not just, saber rattling. It's
Right.
playing out in trade wars, cyber attacks, proxy conflicts, all this stuff.
And I'm guessing the U.S.-China rivalry isn't helping matters much.
Not at all. No, they call it the defining rivalry of the 21st century.
Right.
And the report shows it's at its most intense point in history, which is pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is how this rivalry is reshaping the entire global landscape.
Okay.
Alliances are shifting, countries are being forced to choose sides, and the stakes are incredibly high.
So it's like a new Cold War, but with more players and a lot more unpredictable outcomes.
That's a pretty good analogy, I'd say.
Okay.
Though this time it's not just about ideology.
Right.
It's about control over critical resources,
Yeah.
technological dominance, and ultimately, who gets to write the rules of the 21st century global order.
Okay, so we've got a world on edge, a major power struggle brewing. What else should we be worried about?
Well, climate change is a huge factor they analyze.
Well, of course.
It's not just about rising temperatures anymore. It's about the economic and social consequences
Right.
that come with a changing climate. Mass migrations,
Yeah.
resource scarcity, increased competition for food and water.
And I bet this is hitting some countries harder than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The report highlights the need for adaptation and resilience,
Okay.
which are going to be crucial for nations to navigate these challenges.
Sure.
Countries with the resources and infrastructure to adapt will likely fare better than those that don't.
All right, so we've got global conflict, climate change.
Yeah.
What about the impact of technology?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this feels like a period of unprecedented technological advancement, especially with AI.
And the report doesn't shy away from that at all.
Okay.
It really emphasizes how technological innovation, especially in AI,
Right.
is accelerating at a rate that's caught many off guard.
Yeah.
What I think is fascinating is how the report analyzes the potential of AI to both exacerbate existing problems,
Okay.
like inequality and conflict, but also to offer solutions
Ah.
to some of the world's most pressing challenges.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of conflict, climate change, rapid technological change.
Yeah,
Let's zoom in on some of the key players,
okay.
starting with the United States.
Sure.
Where do we stand in all of this?
Well, the report puts the U.S. in the top spot
Okay.
for overall strength.
All right.
We have the largest economy, the most developed capital markets.
Mm-hmm.
The dollar is still the leading reserve currency.
Yep.
We also have the strongest military
Right.
and a top-tier education system.
Okay, so we're still the reigning superpower, at least for now.
For now, yes.
Okay.
But the report highlights some significant challenges that
Okay.
could erode our position in the coming years.
Like what?
Well, things like large wealth gaps,
Right.
high levels of internal and external conflict,
Yeah.
and a growing national debt.
That's a familiar one.
Yeah, it's definitely putting pressure on our long-term prospects.
So a mixed bag for the U.S.
Yeah, I'd say so.
What about our main rival, China? What's their trajectory looking like?
I mean, China is undeniably a powerhouse.
Oh.
They're ranked second in overall power, excelling in exports, technology, and innovation.
Yeah, we see that.
They also have a strong education system
Okay.
and are rapidly catching up in R&D spending.
Interesting.
One thing I found interesting is the report points to China's low internal conflict risk,
Really?
despite the government's tight control over information and dissent.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
So they're strong and stable internally, But what about their relationship with the rest of the world?
Well, that's where things get a little more interesting.
Okay.
The report highlights a high external conflict risk, primarily with the U.S.,
Right.
and to a lesser extent with other countries in the region.
Makes sense.
So essentially, China's rise is creating friction
Sure.
on the global stage, and how they manage these relationships will be crucial to their continued success.
Okay, so we've got the U.S., the established power, facing some serious challenges, and China, the rising power, navigating a complex geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
What about Europe?
Right.
Where does the Eurozone fit into all of this?
Well, the Eurozone presents a unique case, I think.
Okay.
They're strong in capital markets
Okay.
and have the second strongest reserve currency with the euro.
Mm-hmm.
They also have a strong export position.
Okay.
However,
There's always a however.
right.
Right.
The report points to several challenges, including relatively expensive labor,
Okay.
growing inequality, and a lag in technological innovation compared to the US and China.
So they're a major player, but maybe not in the same league as the U.S. and China.
That's probably a fair assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, the report suggests that the Eurozone needs to address its internal challenges
Okay.
and really step up its game in innovation and technology if it wants to remain competitive on the global stage in the long term.
All right, so we've covered the major players, but this report goes deep into individual countries.
It is.
Let's dig into some of those, starting with Germany.
Yeah.
What's their situation?
Germany is an interesting case.
Okay.
They have low internal conflict risk
All right.
and are the strongest exporter within the Eurozone. However, the report flags a significant underperformance in what they call value for money.
What does that mean exactly?
Essentially, their labor costs and education levels compared to output are raising eyebrows.
Okay.
They're producing high-quality goods and services, but perhaps not as efficiently as they could be.
Right.
Yeah, so there might be a loss of competitive edge there.
So high quality, but maybe not the most efficient.
That's the key takeaway, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're strong, but could be even stronger by optimizing their resources and addressing their rising labor costs.
All right, let's move on to another economic powerhouse. Japan.
Sure.
What's their story?
Well, Japan boasts low internal conflict risk
Okay.
and a strong reserve currency with the yen.
But the report highlights some serious concerns about their aging demographics,
Right?
low projected growth, and long-term economic prospects.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
It's a big question mark whether they can adapt to these demographic and economic shifts.
Yeah, those are some tough challenges.
Yeah.
What about South Korea?
Oh,
They've been making waves in the tech world, haven't they?
absolutely. They stand out for their innovation
Okay.
and the value their workers provide. They're really punching above their weight in technology and global impact.
Yeah, they are.
However, the report flags high debt levels
Okay.
and a shrinking workforce as potential roadblocks
Got it.
to their continued success.
So innovation is their strength, but debt and demographics are their Achilles heel.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
What about India?
Right.
I mean, they have a massive population and a rapidly growing economy.
That's right. Yeah, India has the cheapest labor among major countries,
Wow.
which gives them a significant advantage
Right.
in the global marketplace, of course.
However,
Here we go again.
they significantly lag in innovation and technology.
Right.
They lack reserve currency status
Okay.
and score low on well-being indices.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so they have a lot of catching up to do.
So huge potential, but some serious weaknesses holding them back.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
What are some of the key themes?
I think one of the big ones is that the report highlights
Yeah.
productivity and indebtedness
Okay.
as crucial factors in predicting economic growth
Okay.
over the next decade.
So how productive a country is and how much debt it carries will determine how well it does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the report really digs into how factors like cost competitiveness,
Right.
education infrastructure, investment work ethic,
Wow.
and innovation all play a role in a country's future trajectory.
It's like a recipe for success in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Get these ingredients right.
Yeah.
You're in good shape. Get them wrong and you're in trouble.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
But it's not just about economic factors.
Okay.
The report also delves into the impact of culture on economic success.
Culture, that's an interesting angle.
It is.
How does that factor into all of this?
Well, they explore this tension between savoring life
Okay.
and achieving,
Right.
and how different cultures prioritize these values.
Okay.
And how values around self-sufficiency, innovation, commercialism, bureaucracy, corruption.
Wow, it's a lot.
And rule of law can shape a country's future.
So it's not just about numbers and economic indicators. It's about the values and beliefs that drive people's behavior.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
It is, and it's also where things get really complex.
Sure.
And unpredictable.
Right?
These cultural factors can be difficult to quantify.
Of course.
But have a huge impact on a country's long-term trajectory.
We've covered so much ground already, but I know there's still more to explore.
Oh, yeah.
What other insights can we glean from this data?
Well, one of the most interesting aspects of the report, I think,
is how it measures the strength of a country's financial center. Okay. It's not just about the size of the economy.
Right.
It's about a country's financial clout on the global stage.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What determines a country's financial clout?
Well, they take into account things like the size and development of a country's capital markets,
Okay.
the role its currency plays on the global stage, and how much of the world's financial transactions happen there.
So it's a measure of a country's influence and power within the global financial system.
Exactly.
Okay.
And while the U.S. is still dominant in that regard,
Yeah.
China is quickly gaining ground.
Interesting.
And this raises some interesting questions about the future of the U.S. dollar
Right.
as the world's reserve currency.
Yeah, that's a big deal. The dollar has been the king for so long, but could that be changing?
It's a question a lot of people are asking.
Sure.
The report suggests that while the dollar is still the leading reserve currency,
Okay.
the euro is holding strong in second place.
And China's yuan is slowly but steadily gaining traction.
It's like a currency power struggle is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
And the outcome of this struggle will have huge implications for the global economy and the balance of power in the 21st century.
Wow. Okay, so we've got financial power, but what about good old-fashioned military strength? How does the report measure that?
Well, they look at factors like military spending personnel,
Okay.
nuclear capabilities,
Yeah.
and even external assessments of military strength from organizations like the Global Firepower Index.
And who comes out on top in that arena?
Unsurprisingly, the U.S. still boasts the most powerful military in the world.
Okay.
However, China is rapidly modernizing and expanding its military capabilities.
Right.
And the report highlights this as a potential source of instability
Right.
in the coming years.
So another area where the U.S. is the reigning champ,
Yeah.
but China is a rising challenger. Speaking of challenges, we talked about conflict earlier, is that primarily between countries or our internal conflicts also a major factor.
That's a crucial distinction, and the
Uh-huh.
report breaks it down.
Okay.
While international tensions are rising,
Yeah.
internal conflict is also a major concern
Yeah.
in many parts of the world.
So it's a double whammy conflict both within and between nations.
Yeah, pretty much.
What about governance and rule of law? Do those factors play a role in a country's economic success?
Absolutely. The report dives into that, measuring the strength and stability of a country's legal system,
Okay.
how well it protects property rights, and the level of corruption present.
So it's not enough to have a strong economy. You need a stable and fair system to support it.
Exactly. Corruption and instability can undermine
Right.
even the most promising economies.
All this talk about global power and competition makes me wonder about the future.
Yeah.
What does the report say about where we're headed?
That's where the report gets really interesting, I think. It goes beyond simply describing the current state of affairs
Right.
and delves into projections for the next decade.
So tell me what's coming.
Well, one of their key projections is that we're going to see
Yeah.
significant shifts in the global balance of power.
So who's rising, who's falling? Give me the juicy details.
Well, as we've already discussed, China is projected to continue its rapid rise,
Mm-hmm.
while the U.S. is facing headwinds that could slow its growth and diminish its relative power.
A slow motion changing of the guard.
You could say that.
What about other countries? Any other big movers and shakers we should be watching?
The report highlights a few key players.
Okay.
India, for example,
Yeah.
has the potential to become a major economic force.
Right.
If it can overcome its challenges in innovation and technology.
Right.
Then there are countries like South Korea and Singapore, which are already punching above their weight in areas like technology and finance.
Right.
They could play increasingly important roles on the global stage
Okay.
if they can navigate the challenges they face.
Okay, so the world is changing, power dynamics are shifting, and the future is uncertain.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
Yeah.
But amidst all this change, I think there's also opportunity.
Oh, okay.
This report isn't just about predicting the future.
Right.
It's about understanding the forces that shape it.
Okay.
And with that understanding comes the potential to influence those forces and shape a better future.
So this report isn't just a crystal ball. It's more like a roadmap. It gives us a sense of where we are, where we're headed, and how we might get there.
Exactly. And while the road ahead may be bumpy,
Right.
at least we have a better understanding of the terrain
Sure.
and the challenges we face.
This has been an incredible overview,
Yeah.
but we've only just begun to scratch the surface of this report.
Oh, yeah, we have.
There's so much more to unpack, and I'm eager to dive deeper into some of these themes.
Me too. I'm particularly fascinated by the report's analysis of productivity
Okay.
and how it breaks down the factors that contribute to a country's economic efficiency.
All right, let's dive into that. I'm curious to see what insights we can uncover.
Let's do it. So, as we dive into this concept of productivity, the report really emphasizes that it's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how they break down this idea of working smarter.
Well, they have this fascinating category called what you pay versus what you get,
Okay.
which essentially analyzes the cost and value of labor.
Okay.
So it's not just about having the cheapest labor force, it's about the skills and productivity of those workers
Right.
relative to what they're paid.
So a country with a highly skilled workforce that's also relatively inexpensive would have a significant advantage.
Precisely. And it goes beyond just wages.
Okay.
They consider things like education levels,
Definitely.
the prevailing work ethic in a society, and even how hard people are willing to work relative to their compensation.
It sounds like they're getting at a kind of cultural element of productivity, almost like a collective drive for achievement.
You're picking up on something important there. The report definitely suggests that cultural attitudes towards work and achievement can play a significant role in a country's overall productivity.
This makes me think about those East Asian economies we often hear about, like South Korea and Singapore.
Right.
They seem to have a reputation for having a very strong work ethic.
That's a great observation, and the report seems to support that perception.
Okay.
Those countries consistently score high in terms of productivity,
Right.
and their cultural emphasis on hard work and achievement is likely a contributing factor.
Okay, so we've got this idea of what you pay versus what you get, but what other factors feed into a nation's productivity?
Another crucial element is investment.
Okay.
Countries that invest heavily in infrastructure, technology, and education tend to see much higher productivity growth over the long term.
It's like they're saying you got to spend money to make money.
Haha. That's a simplification, but it captures the essence.
Okay.
It's about creating the conditions for a thriving economy,
Right.
and that requires strategic investment.
But isn't there a risk that those investments could be wasted or misallocated?
Sure.
I'm thinking about countries with high levels of corruption or bureaucracy, where those investments might not reach the people or sectors that need them most.
That's a crucial point, and the report acknowledges those risks.
Okay.
They emphasize that factors like corruption, bureaucratic inefficiency, and a lack of rule of law
Yeah.
can significantly hinder investment and stifle economic growth.
So it's like a balancing act.
Right.
You need investment, but you also need a system in place to ensure that those investments are used effectively.
Exactly. It all ties back to this idea of working smarter, not just harder.
Right.
It's about making strategic investments and creating an environment where those investments can translate into real economic growth.
This brings us back to the theme of culture, doesn't it?
It does.
The values and norms that prevail in a society seem to have a huge impact on how effectively those resources are used.
Absolutely. And the report explores some fascinating cultural factors that can influence economic growth, for example. They talk about the tension between savoring life
Okay.
and achieving.
That's an interesting dichotomy. So some cultures prioritize enjoying the present moment,
Yeah,
while others are more focused on striving for future success.
that's a good way to put it. And this difference in cultural values can have real economic consequences.
Interesting.
Cultures that emphasize hard work, delayed gratification, and a willingness to invest in the future tend to be more economically successful in the long run.
It makes me think about those Scandinavian countries that often rank high in terms of quality of life,
Right.
but maybe don't have the same level of economic dynamism as some other developed nations.
That's an interesting example, and it highlights the complexity of this issue.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to economic success.
Of course.
Different cultures prioritize different values, and those values shape their economic and social structures in unique ways.
So it's not about saying one cultural approach is better than another. It's about understanding how those values shape a country's trajectory.
Precisely. And that understanding can help us make more informed decisions
Sure.
about how to navigate an increasingly complex and interconnected world.
You know, this report has given me a whole new perspective on global power dynamics.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about military might or the size of a country's economy. It's about a much more intricate interplay of factors, from productivity and investment to cultural values and governance.
That's a fantastic takeaway, and I think that's what makes this report so valuable.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions and encourages us to think more deeply about the forces that shape our world.
And even though some of the trends we've discussed are a bit unsettling, like the rise in global conflict and the challenges posed by climate change, I'm also feeling a sense of hope.
Hope? Why is that?
Because knowledge is power.
Oh, I like that.
By understanding these trends, we can start to make informed decisions that could lead to a better future.
That's a great point. This report isn't just about predicting the future, it's about empowering us to shape it.
Exactly. And that's a responsibility we should all take seriously.
I couldn't agree more. The future is not predetermined. It's something we create together through our choices and actions.
Okay. This deep dive has been amazing. We've covered so much ground already, from global conflict to economic forecasts to the influence of culture.
And we've barely scratched the surface.
I know.
There are layers upon layers of data and analysis in this report, but we do have to wrap up sometime.
All right. I guess all good things must come to an end, but I'm already looking forward to our next deep dive into this fascinating report. I have a feeling there's still much more to uncover.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning the world around you.
And remember, the future is in our hands. Let's make it a good one. Okay, so we've established that productivity is about more than just, churning out widgets. It's about efficiency and the quality of your workforce and even those cultural values we talked about. But the report goes even deeper into this whole section on debt cycles and their impact on a country's economic future.
Yeah, debt cycles are fascinating, and the report argues that understanding them is crucial for predicting long-term economic growth.
So it's not just about how much debt a country has.
No, not at all. It's about the type of debt, how it's being used, and how it's managed.
That makes sense. A country borrowing to invest in infrastructure or education is probably a different story than one borrowing just to stay afloat.
Exactly. The report really digs into the different phases of debt cycles and how they impact economic growth. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of responsible fiscal policy.
So what does this mean for the countries we've been discussing? Or some of them sitting on a debt time bomb?
Well, some countries are definitely facing more significant debt challenges than others.
Okay.
The report points to the US and some European countries like Italy and Greece as having high levels of debt that could hinder their long-term growth.
And what about rapidly developing economies like China and India?
Right.
Are they racking up unsustainable levels of debt in their pursuit of growth?
It's interesting, both China and India are highlighted as having relatively low levels of external debt.
Okay.
However, the report warns that internal debt levels in China, particularly within their corporate sector, are a potential cause for concern.
So even with a rapidly growing economy, managing those internal debt levels will be crucial for China's long-term stability.
Precisely. It's a reminder that even the most dynamic economies are not immune to the risks associated with excessive debt.
Right.
And it underscores the importance of understanding these cycles and implementing policies to mitigate those risks.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by how interconnected all of these factors are. Productivity, debt cycles, technological advancement, cultural values. They all seem to influence a country's trajectory in this increasingly complex world.
I agree, and I think the report does a remarkable job of weaving together these seemingly disparate threads into a cohesive narrative about global power dynamics in the 21st century. It's not a simple story, but it's a vital one for anyone who wants to understand the forces shaping our world.
And ultimately, it's not just about understanding, it's about what we do with that. Understanding this report gives us a glimpse into the future.
Right.
But it doesn't dictate the outcome.
That's the most empowering takeaway for me. The future is not predetermined. It's something we shape collectively and individually through our choices and actions.
This has been an incredibly insight. Thank you so much for walking me through all of this and helping me understand this complex and honestly sometimes overwhelming data.
It's been my pleasure. And for you listening out there, remember that the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we create. So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's build a future worthy of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead